Hey y'all, Gary here with Tennessee Stands. Just got done listening to the Supreme Court oral arguments on the OSHA mandate. And so I have some thoughts I just wanted to share with you, some guesses as to how we feel like this might go. Also, depending upon how it might go, how this impacts Tennessee and the law we passed in Title 14 during special session, juxtaposed against whatever the Supreme Court has to say about OSHA's authority to issue this rule. So we're going to dive into that really quickly here. But really quick before we get to that, just want to make sure we're going to put out more information about that. But I want to make sure everyone's aware we are kicking off the Freedom Matters Tour once again here in 2022, and we're excited about it. We're going back to Howe Farms in Chattanooga on January 18th. It's coming up in, less than a couple of weeks, right? So January 18th in the Chattanooga area, Howe Farms. You can go to freedommatterstour.com. That's freedommatterstour.com. I'll be there. Kevin Kukuji, the chairman of our board, will be there. Excited about getting him out. And also, we will have with us again Dr. Alan Keyes. And if you know anything about Dr. Alan Keyes, and even if you don't know anything about Dr. Alan Keyes, I will tell you, you do not want to miss this guy. I'm so thankful to have the relationship we have with him, and excited he's going to be there. So freedommatterstour.com, go check it out. Also, we're going to put out some information about an event we're having here in Williamson County, but we will also be broadcasting it live on January 27th. We're having an election integrity symposium on what's going on here in Tennessee and some legislation we would like to see happen this year. And we will have Garland Favorito from Vote Georgia with us live, and we will have Mark Fincham from Arizona here with us live, along with some of our state legislators. It's going to be a great event. That's January 27th at 6 p.m. at Generations Church in Franklin, Tennessee. And you can go register for that event. You have to register because live attendance will be very limited. So you have to register if you want to attend in person to reserve your seat. And you can go to TennesseeStands.org/symposium. That's TennesseeStands.org/symposium. Okay, on to the OSHA arguments. So some things that, we posted on Facebook already that there wasn't a lot being said about states' rights in the Constitution, and that held true through the remainder of the argument. So they did talk about states' rights a little bit, but there's a couple things I want to point out. Look at my notes here. So Justice Alito, by exponential increments, is the guy on our side here. Justice Thomas as well, but Alito did more than ask tough questions. He sort of argued our point for us from the bench a little bit. And by the way, did a much better job of arguing our point than the defense did. I don't remember his name, but not a very strong performance for our team in the Supreme Court today. But two things that Alito pointed out that I thought were crucial to get. He says OSHA's desire to protect unvaccinated people or unvaccinated employees supersedes the fact that those unvaccinated employees have already assumed the risk associated with their decisions. In other words, why is OSHA so concerned about the need to protect unvaccinated employees from being affected whenever those unvaccinated employees have in effect made their own decision to be unvaccinated and thereby have already personally assumed any risk associated with being unvaccinated? I thought that was a great point. That probably was one of the best points of all of the arguments is, why is a federal agency trying to determine that it needs to protect someone when they are clearly making a decision and telling you that they don't need your protection, nor do they want it? And we're not even discussing yet whether or not the Constitution gives OSHA, an agency like OSHA, the authority to protect the unvaccinated to begin with. That's a whole nother argument that they never really talked about. But another point that Alito made is that in his mind, this was the first time that OSHA would make a requirement, i.e. to be vaccinated, that actually impacts the employee beyond the workplace. Think about that for a minute. That's a huge distinction. I mean, typically, OSHA requirements in terms of keeping employees safe impact you only in the workplace. When you're at work, do this so that you're safe in the workplace, especially in a machine shop, manufacturing, all those sorts of things. What you're dealing with chemicals and you're dealing with machinery and all this. But Alito's point is that you're telling people to be vaccinated against a virus in order to come to work. Well, that decision, that mandate to be vaccinated goes way beyond the workplace and affects the rest of their lives and affects their lives everywhere else they go, well beyond the workplace. I thought that was also a great point. So what he's saying is we're expanding OSHA's power now to make rules and regulations that go beyond just impacting safety in the workplace and impacting every arena of life that an individual might touch in every other relationship they might come in contact with in their own homes, in churches, in other places beyond the workplace. So I thought that was also a great point. Again, the biggest, I'll get to something Sotomayor said, which I thought was really good as well, which I want to expand how that implicates our state law here. But the bottom line is, here's what nobody talked about. The fact that the Constitution of the United States of America, at no point in reading it, enumerates a power to the federal government to make mandates like this, that impact an individual's healthcare decisions, that impacts an individual's ability to provide for their family, that impacts an individual's ability to earn an income, that impacts an individual's personal medical decisions, that have an impact on the rest of their lives, and also a mandate that something else Alito mentioned, or maybe it was, I'm not sure if it was Alito on this one, but another justice mentioned the fact that isn't this mandate also asking someone to assume risk? Although the risk, according to some, may be small in terms of the negative impacts of this quote-unquote vaccine, or the jab as we like to call it. But requiring someone to take this vaccination is also requiring someone to assume a set of risks. As with any medication, as with any other vaccine, there are legitimate risks involved. I thought that was also a great point. But the bottom line is, what we didn't talk about is, does the federal government have this power in the first place? And something really scary that the government's defense attorney and Sotomayor got into a love fest about is inventing police power. They begin to talk a lot about police power. Guess what the federal government does not have? Police power. Police power has always been known to exist solely in the states. How? Per the 10th Amendment. Because per the 10th Amendment, that power has not been enumerated to the federal government, so it's always been reserved to the states or to the people. And the 10th Amendment is how states have assumed and inferred its ability to have police power. But Sotomayor and this attorney are actually talking about that and they used the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic as an example. If this was as bad as 1918, if something's bad enough, then the federal government has the ability to invent its own police power. Do we recognize how dangerous it is that a defense attorney for the U.S. government and a sitting Supreme Court justice is putting out the idea that the federal government has a right, has a duty to invent powers for itself should the situation be bad enough, even though the people never gave it such a power per the Constitution. This is mind-blowing. To me, it's mind-blowing, but maybe it's not mind-blowing because we've been having conversations like this for a long time. But they're inventing powers they don't have simply because they feel like the circumstances demand it. But that's not where power and authority comes from. If that were the case, well, I could go, if my situation for my family was dire enough financially that I needed to provide for my family or we were going to die and we weren't going to be able to eat. If that situation is dire enough for me and my family, then I'm going to invent myself the right for me to go take your house. Because I have to. Because if I don't invent this new right for me to go take your house and take your money and take your food that I now claim a right to, because if I don't, I'm going to die. I mean, that's literally what the federal government, what Sotomayor is suggesting here. That for the government to provide for the safety of the people, even though we have no such authority, we have the power to invent that authority for ourselves if we deem it necessary enough in order for us to protect the people. That's incredibly dangerous because what they're saying now is, well, the federal government can do what? They can do anything as long as they feel it's necessary to provide for the safety of the people. They can do anything. Do you see where this goes? Okay, I'm hitting that point. I'll stop now and move on. Something else that Sotomayor acknowledged that I thought was a good thing. I'm glad she acknowledged this. And here's where I want to get into Tennessee law a bit. And this is kind of a scary thing to say, but I'm just telling you like it is. Title 14, you need to know this. I want to be clear about this because there's still so much confusion. Title 14, the law that we passed in the special session, the omnibus bill, makes no exception for this OSHA rule. Whether or not, if you're an employer in the state of Tennessee, whether or not you have one employee or 50,000 employees to infinity employees, that number does not matter per the law in Tennessee. It is illegal for you to require a proof of vaccination status as a condition of employment. And per 14-1-101, number 1, the definition of adverse action, it is illegal in the state of Tennessee for you to take any adverse action against an employee based on their vaccination status, which includes compensation, terms of employment, locations for employment is in there. Locations means you can't force them to work remotely because they're vaccinated, right? Compensation. You cannot charge them more for their health insurance simply because they're unvaccinated. It talks about discrimination and terms and treating employees differently. You cannot make employees wear masks only if they're unvaccinated. You cannot, in the state of Tennessee, per the law that we the people passed by our elected representatives, you have no authority and no legal right to treat unvaccinated employees any differently than any other employee based on their vaccination status. That is illegal practice in the state of Tennessee, and it needs to stop. So here's the point that Sotomayor made, which I'm thankful she made, is that this OSHA rule, please hear, if you hear nothing else that I've said, hear this in regards to Tennessee. Should the Supreme Court uphold this OSHA mandate, which God help us if they do, and I hope they don't, but even if they do, this OSHA mandate does not make vaccination a requirement for employment. I don't think many of us are grasping that, so let me make that clear. This OSHA rule requires the employer to make one of two decisions, and it's up to the discretion of the employer. They can either require vaccination as a condition of employment, or they can require unvaccinated employees to wear masks and test on a regular basis. That's the two choices. So if the OSHA rule is implemented and held up by the Supreme Court, that still does not give employers in the state of Tennessee the legal authority to require vaccinations of employees as a condition of employment. Why? Because that's illegal in the state of Tennessee. Okay? So being that it's illegal in the state of Tennessee by state law, and OSHA is giving you a choice, you will be able to comply with this OSHA ruling without requiring vaccination. Okay? If you put those two things together, it's very simple. It makes it illegal per federal law and state law for any employer outside of healthcare right now because of the CMS mandate, but for any other employer outside of healthcare to mandate the shot as a condition of employment, because that is not, it is illegal per state law, and it is not required to follow the OSHA rule. Now, here's the problem. In order to comply with OSHA, that means the employer would have to require unvaccinated employees to wear masks and test regularly. I don't remember if it's weekly or what the rule is, but let's just say regularly for now. The issue is that that is also illegal in the state of Tennessee per state law because that's an adverse action. Why? Because you're discriminating against unvaccinated employees. You're treating them differently. You're creating a different set of conditions for their employment. That is illegal per Title 14. Here's what that would mean. Okay, here's the scary part. Now, I don't want to say this, but I'm just saying it. The only way for every employer in the state of Tennessee to comply both with state law and with this OSHA mandate would be for every employer in the state of Tennessee that has 100 or more employees, by the way. This OSHA rule only impacts employers with 100 or more employees. Every other employer still has to, you have nothing else to hang your hat on but state law. But if you're a larger corporation, a larger business, the only way you could satisfy both state law and OSHA is to require all of your employees to mask and to be tested regularly. Because state law, unfortunately, as long as you are treating every employee the same, regardless of their vaccination status, state law does not forbid you from masking your employees or from requiring that they test for COVID-19. I hate that part of the law. We failed on that part of the law. That is asinine. That is ridiculous to me, that your employer can force you to be masked and force you to undergo constant medical testing for a respiratory virus. I think that's asinine and ridiculous. Nonetheless, and we're not even talking about constitutional rights right now. So probably most of you watching this video, if you follow Tennessee Stands, we all know there is a strong constitutional argument to be made that all of this is unconstitutional, period, and that governments and employees have no rights over the health care of individuals per the security of individual liberties per our Constitution, both state and federal. But that's why you shouldn't comply with any of this. But please hear me. I'm simply talking about what the laws are right now, how legislatures have worked through these laws. So, if the Supreme Court upholds this mandate, the sad fact is that these corporations can, and it's the only way they would be complying with both state and federal law at that point, would be to make everyone mask and everyone test. Here's what needs to happen. We need to follow Montana. I keep saying it. I know I keep saying it, but we need to follow Montana. Why? Because Montana has passed a law that's been law since last May that amended their human rights code to make all of this nonsense discriminatory, period. Not just a vaccination for COVID-19, but a vaccination for any communicable disease. The state in Montana has deemed it just discriminatory on its face, like race, sex, religion. It's just discriminatory. You can't do it. And here's the kicker. The reason Montana has been successful in not only enforcing this law, but with corporations complying with this law is because of leadership. Leadership, which we don't have here in the state of Tennessee. Their governor in the state of Montana has been leading publicly on this issue, that corporations need to follow state law and they will enforce state law. Their attorney general and their lieutenant governor, by the way, are both feckless individuals here in the state of Tennessee. But in Montana, they are personally calling the lieutenant governor, of Montana has personally called Costco's corporate office and demanded that they cease all of this activity in the state of Montana because it's illegal in Montana. And guess what they did? They stopped. Why? Because of leadership. And so at the end of the day, the problem with all of this in the state of Tennessee right now is that no matter what law you pass on this basis regarding medical freedom, our governor will not lead on the issue. I can't speculate as to why that is for him personally, but you won't hear him lead on this issue. The attorney general will not lead on this issue. Our lieutenant governor certainly will not lead on this issue, who never wanted the special session to begin with. And the problem is, so you have a state law, but then everyone is left fending for themselves. Businesses are required, employees are required, everyone's required to take it to court. And you all know, as you're seeing even with the Supreme Court, how fickle they are. And they're not on our side. And they are as corrupt as corruption can possibly get, unfortunately, in the state of Tennessee, in my personal opinion, in my personal experience. I'll close with these couple of thoughts here. How do I think this is going to go? This is total guess. Total guesswork here. I'm rolling the dice, all right? I don't think the Supreme Court is going to issue a stay. I think we're going to get hosed based on what I've heard. And what I think is that Justices Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh are going to vote to stay this OSHA rule. So we're going to have 4 votes in our favor. But I think that Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts are going to side with the progressive bench on this. I could be totally wrong. That's my guess. My guess is this is going to be a 5-4 decision in favor of allowing OSHA to continue with this unconstitutional, unlawful federal overreach. The last thing I'll say is the burden that this is putting on small business is actually quite incredible. I won't say who they are, but I know of a small business personally here in Williamson County. Understand that to comply with this testing part of the OSHA rule, there's a cost to businesses. Businesses have to now buy tests. We're creating a whole industry now around COVID testing. You realize that. And who's making money off of this? Who's getting paid for this, right? Where's all this money going? Because these people are going to make billions and billions and billions of dollars. They already are, all right? And where's all that going? Who's really getting that? Of course, Big Pharma is. But why are these politicians continuing to allow these things to happen? It's a good question that we should be asking ourselves. But this small business in Williamson County, it's going to cost him roughly $4,000 a month. Now, I've owned several small businesses in the past. Now, think about that. $4,000 a month is a huge additional cost to a small business that you did not foresee when you did your annual budget plan and the way you've structured your business. $4,000 a month. That's just one small business. Now, the law would allow him to pass that cost on to his employees, but he's not going to do that. He's going to absorb all the cost himself. But it's going to cost him another $4,000 a month to supply this testing and comply with this OSHA mandate. That's just one small business. That's just one. So, look, that's where we are. I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to do yet. Like I say, I think we're going to lose, but who knows? Miracles can happen. So pray. And we don't know what the final ruling is going to be. Right now, they're only ruling on whether or not they're going to put a temporary stay on the mandate. But who knows in months to come what the final ruling is going to be on whether or not we're going to expand federal power. I mean, honestly, more than we've ever seen since income tax, right? In order for the power of the government, the federal government, to reach down to the individual and tax them or force them to make medical decisions that they don't want to make. That's where we are. I don't know what else to say about it right now. I think that at the end of the day, every employer in the state of Tennessee should be obeying state law. We passed a state law that says you can't do this and you can't discriminate against people. We passed that law. That law passed. That's actually law in the state of Tennessee. But here's what we need. I'll say it. This will be my final statement before I close this video. For that to mean anything, it requires leadership. It requires the governor to use his bully pulpit, to stand behind his podium and say it. To be a leader and say it. Say, we're a state. We have states' rights. We're a sovereign state. Here's state law. Obey the law. That's what you should be saying. Our attorney general should be fighting for the people of this state to follow state law. Our lieutenant governor, as our leader in our General Assembly, as a legislative leader in our state, should be telling these employers, follow the law, follow state law, follow the rule of law. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where we are here in the state of Tennessee. God bless you. Love you.